Are we on the record? Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I now call this work session to order. It's a work session to discuss AM 553-2024, which is executive appointment confirmation hearing. Eva Gardner, municipal attorney. Go ahead and do introductions, starting with Mr. Littlefield.
Mark Littlefield.
We can come back to you.
Zach Johnson.
Meg Zoloton.
Christopher Constant on the phone. We have Mr. Salt.
Randy Sold here.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Thank you. And we have with us, of course, Mayor LaFrance and our appointee for Municipal Attorney Eva Gardner. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to members of the Assembly for having us here today. Eva comes to the municipality from a role as managing shareholder at the law firm Ashburn and Mason, where she worked since 2013. Her practice at Ashburn and Mason focused on employment law, constitutional law, real estate issues, and commercial disputes. She has been involved in litigation in Alaska State Court, Federal District Court, the Ninth Circuit, and the U.S. Supreme Court. Eva received her undergraduate and master's degrees from Columbia University and her JD from New York University. She first came to Alaska as a summer intern in the State of Alaska Department of Law and returned after law school to clerk for the Honorable Sharon Gleason in Alaska Superior Court and U.S. District Court. Eva is an experienced civil litigator who also brings managing experience to the top job in the municipality's Department of Law. Staff in the Department of Law have welcomed her arrival, and she has already been able to recruit back former municipal attorneys and attract talented new attorneys as well. Her ability to hire, retain, and empower staff is critical at a time when the Department of Law is experiencing high levels of vacancy. In just 2 weeks on the job, I've already witnessed Eva provide sound legal advice while bringing strong practical problem-solving skills and a collaborative approach to the job. I am grateful to Eva for her willingness to serve the municipality and the community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Introduction.
Thank you. And thank you for scheduling this work session so soon after July 1st. So I'm here before you because I live in Anchorage, I love Anchorage, and I want to help. I'm not here because I want to be a political actor or a policymaker. I understand that as municipal attorney, my job will be to be a helper. I'll help the Department of Law keep running and protect the institutional knowledge, culture, and skills that live inside it. I'll help resolve disputes and mitigate legal risk to the municipality while honoring the public trust. And I'll help support and advise the administration, the departments, and the Assembly, and where appropriate, help facilitate communications between all of those entities. I took this job with full knowledge of its unique challenges at this point in time. And in fact, I took it because of those challenges. I like fixing problems. I knew about the Department of Law's staffing issues and the staggering loss of veteran attorneys it has suffered in the last few years. And I had a sense that my background and skills were uniquely well suited to help. To put a finer point on it, according to HR statistics, law has had one of the highest turnover rates of any municipal department since 2022. It currently has one of the highest vacancy rates of any department. Decades of institutional knowledge have walked out the door since 2022, which has left multiple departments around the municipality without full access to counsel. To be clear, the attorneys who are in the department now are great. They are smart, they're thorough, hardworking, and committed. But most of them are relatively new to municipal practice, and law is a profession that benefits hugely from mentorship and learned knowledge. There also just aren't enough of them. Knowing this, I spent the 2 weeks after my role was announced learning about the office's specific needs and doing targeted recruitment to help build the legal team back up. Already, I've brought 2 longtime attorneys back, and 1 brilliant new one is joining next week as my deputy. And we have 2 more with decades of experience who are going to come back and consult on a part-time contract basis and also perform legal work. And the goal there is to help train, supervise, and mentor the newer attorneys. And I include myself in that because I too am new to municipal practice. But the work is ongoing. The civil division will need to work together to reestablish internal systems and processes that have been forgotten. And my leadership team will also need to address challenges with the municipal prosecutor's office and the public defense contracts. It's going to be a ton of work, and it's already been a ton of work, but I'm very grateful to be here and have the chance to do it.
Thank you. First in the queue, Mrs. Alto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have two questions. One is how you view the role of the municipal attorney. I think it's a unique role. It's one where your clients are varied, and it's one where you intersect with two branches of government where your client might be either. So I'd just like to hear a little bit of your perspective on that. Secondarily, I would really like to hear, to the extent that you have some plans around the municipal prosecutor's office. I think while the municipal attorney's office in general has a high vacancy rate, I have really grave concerns about how the municipal prosecutor's office is right now or how it operated. And I understand there's I have understood that there's some considerable morale issues there in particular, and I'm curious how you'd want to address those. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. First, my opening comments addressed a bit how I see the role as a helper and facilitator, but specifically, I think to your questions, the part of your question that asked about the different clients and how to play the role of attorney when you have different clients. Fortunately, it's not just me. I have an office, and I've already had conversations with my office about how we represent, under code, the municipal attorney represents the entire government. And so that means we represent the assembly, we represent the administration, we represent individual departments. And one of my goals is to make sure that we have systems set up so that if one client wants advice, they have access to conflict-free counsel within our office. If it should be confidential and not discussed internally within the office, we will set up those ethical walls. And so one of the projects is going to be to formalize some systems and processes to make sure that that's the case. I think we are likely looking at a technological upgrade of our document management and case management system soon that should also make sure that we really can slam those walls down and prevent any cross flow of information. And for that, I think it really is a matter of drawing clear lines, communicating clearly what the expectations are, and setting up systems that can honor them. And as part of that, I do plan to meet with assembly leadership and each assembly member to find out what their concerns are in that front, what issues there have been in the past, and work together to figure out a system for the assembly, which then we can bring, to all of our government clients that assures that we can properly, ethically, and effectively represent each one. And then to the second question, the municipal prosecutor's office. I have spent many hours talking to people about that office prior to July 1st and since. My plan for it is first, I actually have a job. We posted it yesterday for a new municipal prosecutor with Dustin Pearson, the current municipal prosecutor's support, to bring in somebody. And what we are looking for is somebody really energetic with deep knowledge of criminal practice who has creative approaches to possible ways to reduce the caseload by using alternative resolution mechanisms. So we've posted that job, actively recruiting. I have, again, been talking to a lot of people about it. I believe there are a few people who already will apply. I plan to include my leadership team and the municipal prosecutor, current one, and deputy in those interviews. And I'm hoping to take the approach of hire the best person for that job who fits what that office needs, and they can come in and lift the morale, hire more people. The recruitment and retention have been a huge problem there, and revitalize it. So I don't have anything more specific than that, but that is step one of the plan. Another step is also going to be to raise pay in there, because those prosecutors work so hard. They work nights and weekends. They have hundreds in a good time, but currently thousands of cases, and they are constantly losing people to other jobs because the work is so hard. It's so vast, and they are underpaid. And so it is possible I will be coming and asking for more funding for my department if what we need to do to recruit and retain good attorneys is pay them a little bit more.
Thank you. And I appreciate the attorney pay issue. We did raise attorney pay a year and a half, 2 years ago. So hopefully there's some tools already available to you. On the issue of kind of creating those clear boundaries and clear walls, actually it's a request, and you can respond to it if you want. I think what was lacking in the last administration that I really would like is if if advice is being given on the dais in the moment, and you have a client, to disclose who your client is. The municipal attorney doesn't always have a client, but sometimes they do. And I think that will allay a lot of concern and confusion as to if you've consulted with the mayor and given advice, then the mayor is your client. Or if you haven't and you're just looking out for the best interests of the municipality, that's good to know. That kind of transparency as we're receiving that information from our side is just really, really helpful. And I think that will help really reset the framework between the two branches of government. Thank you.
I was offered the opportunity to respond. I would like to point you to the email I sent yesterday. I take that, I understand that, and I came into this role sensitive to the possible conflict issues. So if you look at the email I sent yesterday responding to Chief Case's distribution of the draft body cam footage release policy, I made an effort in that email to say that I and a specific attorney in my office had been working on that policy with him so that you would know what our role was in that process. And I do intend to do that going forward, and my office will do that.
Thank you.
All right, so I have myself in the queue, then Mr. Rivera. I sense a theme, and so I won't retread, but I share the same concerns and hopes in relationship to reestablishing a functional relationship between the branches, and in particular, that members can rely consistently on the seventh floor and its attorneys, the municipal attorney's office, who represent us for representation on any number of projects or interests or concerns, because that was effectively lost. And there is a long history that we could point to over the last few years where the fraying became more than frayed. It was downright hazardous, I think, to the municipality as a whole. But I won't retread that because, again, I'm optimistic and I have had good conversations with you and with members of the team who are coming back. And I think there is, again, a sense of how that role can function where it hasn't functioned in years. To that end, there's kind of an outlier, unresolved issue that it's in that theme, but it's a narrower part of it. And it's something I look forward to conversations about. And that is your understanding of the relationship between the municipal attorney, assembly council, and the assembly legislative council. How do you think that should work?
I will say that we have scheduled a meeting on Monday to discuss that, among other issues, in terms of what I don't know that I understand that perfectly right now, I'll be honest. But one of the things I would like to do is understand that and make sure that I am providing the support I need to them, and they are providing, whatever we need to do. So I am hoping communication with the people who know more than I do will resolve that.
That's good. And just a few examples, if you go back to the charter conventions and the hearings that are recorded, you can hear them or you can read when they discussed the creation of the municipal attorney. They also discussed providing the assembly its own attorney. And my appraisal of what it said, and it's worth reviewing it sometime when you have a minute, it was that they didn't want to have warring counsel between the branches, but they recognized that the assembly will from time to time need counsel. And the conversation went down the road of, well, maybe we just let them occasionally hire, or they can set someone up and hire someone. And in the end, the determination was made that we could hire someone to provide counsel to the assembly because our interests are sometimes at odds. And I think that they used the term, you'd have to be a Superman to be able to manage all of that as a municipal attorney, representing the assembly, representing the mayor, representing the municipality, with us being represented, because ultimately the branch that loses is the assembly branch when the municipal attorney's office decides to fold in the carts, circle the wagons. And we don't want to go back there. We want to have a strong working relationship. When I started, a few of us, 3 or 4 of us, figured out the secret to being a great legislator was the 7th floor, because you have maybe 15 to 20 bodies up there and excellent, hopefully when we get fully staffed attorneys who have more time than our poor, very thinly stretched 2 attorneys who represent 12 very strong-headed people. And so I want to get back to that point, I guess is my point of bringing all of this up. And I strongly recommend us find a really good working relationship between counsel's offices because we can be so much stronger when we work together. So I guess that's a riff.
Thank you. I will respond generally, but maybe I'll focus my response on the last point, which is the attorneys in my office and I have even been discussing how I think everyone in my office would love to return to that collaborative relationship and working with the assembly. It is a very unique thing to be a lawyer and have access to the people who make the laws. Typically in private practice, you don't like something about federal law, maybe in a few years it'll change. State law, if you don't like something in state law, maybe in a couple of years something would change. But being in the municipal attorney's office, having the ability to help you do your work, bring messages, from the various departments about practical problems that they face, or a new case comes down that needs to be accounted for in code. It's just a very exciting and fun opportunity. And that's, kind of the cherry on top for us, I think, is having access to you so that we can better do our jobs and help you refine the law. But I think everyone is very excited about bringing that relationship back.
Thanks. And I think that cherry is a core value. So maybe it's cherry ice cream, but thank you. Next, Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is along the same lines of some of the previous speakers around the relationship between the municipal attorney's office and the assembly. And sort of, I'll go into the specific issues, but then speak more broadly. Specifically when it comes to liability, that is a word that over the last year I have heard so many times come from the municipal attorney's office to the point where, at least from my perspective, the municipal attorney's office was the place where ideas went to die, which, let's be honest, that's supposed to be the traffic department, not the municipal attorney's office. So I guess and I'll give a few concrete examples there of where sort of liability killed some interesting ideas from my perspective. For example, the issue of designated safe parking areas. Although I wouldn't call that one a killed idea. Liability seems to have put a brake on that idea, and I hope that we can put our foot off the brake and go on the go. The referral registry for private property to allow up to 3/10, that was something that the municipal attorney's office, and specifically this idea of liability, killed. And then allowed camps, which this body never took a vote on, but liability from the municipal attorney's office became a big issue with that one. So I am just curious about how the municipal, yourself, and as a possible municipal attorney, sees your relationship with the assembly and how you can get us to yes instead of using, I don't want to say that the previous municipal attorney used liability as a way to stop ideas, but how can you help us get to yes? That is the frame that I want to use. And if you want to talk about liability specifically, feel free to do that.
Thank you. I love this question. My approach when somebody comes to me with a legal problem, a practical problem that they want, then I listen to what's going on, and then I say, what is your end goal? What do you want to accomplish? And then we'll have a discussion. Okay, well, is it illegal to do that? In which case, yes, I might strongly encourage having that idea die. But a lot of the time, it's a spectrum of risk. And so I view the role of an attorney in things like that. You come with an idea or a policy, and this would be true for any department within the municipality. You come with an idea or a policy. If it, liability should not kill it, the risk of liability. So I think our role would be to advise on the law, advise as to where the risks are, and try to estimate the magnitude of the risks, and then leave it to the policymakers to decide if the benefit of rolling out whatever it is worth the risk. That's not my call to make. Again, unless I'm like, this is 150% certain liability, possibly illegal, I will tell that to you very clearly. But even then, it's your decision, if that answers the question.
You did. Thank you. I think that gets to the idea of your role as an advisor versus as a policymaker. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question, Mr. Rivera. Next, Mr. Martinez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And following along a similar line of discussion, I do appreciate you being with us today, Ms. Gardner, and I appreciate you describing the role through your perspective of supporter. And I really appreciate that the Assembly is the cherry on top of your day. I think that is a phenomenal understanding of the opportunity that you've presented. But I'd love to hear you said it, but I'd love to hear just the clarity. Who do you work for as the municipal attorney? I've often felt, at least, that we've had conflicts through a lens of policy, preferences, and not necessarily through the lens of the supportive nature of one municipality with different moving parts. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts again on who would you work for as the municipal attorney, having been appointed by a mayor and confirmed by an assembly?
Thank you. I'm going to quote Anchorage Municipal Code 5.04, which is the section establishing the municipal attorney's office. There shall be a municipal attorney appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the assembly. The attorney serves at the pleasure of the mayor. The attorney shall advise and assist the municipal government on legal matters. My client is the government. And again, one person cannot simultaneously advise all parts of the government on all matters at all times, but that's why we have a team. And so if necessary, we'll put up the ethical screens within the office to make sure that each of our clients has effective access to counsel. And I will say I take the confirmation part of this code provision very seriously. As the attorneys in my office can attest, I have not put anything on my walls. It is exactly as it is the day I walked in, because I'm not moving in until this body confirms me.
I appreciate that. And just to follow up, from my vantage point, one of the challenges that I've observed is that the clarity of the distinction between that understanding that you've just articulated, the deeper understanding of the policy role versus the supportive role to the municipality. I would encourage, in the same line of the process that you've begun, similar to the way Chief Case has described his intentionality to have robust and often and early communication, so that we can have that alignment that Chair spoke about, retooling the relationship. But I'm also I wanted to flag, similar to where Felix was, this idea that sometimes I have felt that there's been a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of the assembly with respect to the long view and of public policy and the implications to the quality of life of our community and our city. And I have felt like there have been blocks and barriers to transparency and blocks and barriers to timely and reliable information as policymakers that have put us in some not so favorable conditions to make policy, but has also led to some very challenging moments that fundamentally, on the other side of the coin, we have found out as kind of after the fact that there were administrative actions that were taken through at the same time, while there was a veil of kind of a lack of information flowing, so that then at the end of the day, the assembly was often responsible for some of the liabilities that were developed because of the bad implementation of policies that we weren't aware of because of those walls of lack of information. So I just wanted to flag that for you, and I hope that you would consistently have that presence and that early conversation, those early conversations with us, so that we can see the long view of the municipality and the administration and where they want to head with the implementation questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is, I will say, in every meeting with the administration that I've had so far and with the assembly, there seems to be a mutual desire on both sides to really improve that communication and increase that collaboration. And I'm looking forward to that because I think everyone is here because we want the city to work. We want the city to work well, and communication and working together on things is going to work a lot better than working in our own silos and then butting heads.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. I asked Chief Designee Case a question about the police response and how we address rather pervasive, low-level crime, retail theft, things of that nature. I think you were here when I asked him about it. And he talked about things APD can do and then sort of affect their ability to respond. But he also kind of suggested it's not just a police problem, and it requires other municipal resources, including the prosecutor's office, and talked a little bit about their staffing challenges, and then seemed to suggest you're maybe looking at some maybe programmatic changes as well. I was wondering if you could elaborate on a little bit, if, assuming once you've had time and you're able to hopefully achieve the goals that you've outlined for yourself, what that will mean. What do you see being the change at a city level for the people who are, the people who are concerned about this and see the problem as pervasive? Like, how do you see this making things better?
And I'll reiterate again, I'm not a policymaker, and I will say this is one area where I'm very glad that there are teams of experts assembling and already in existence to deal with the broader issues in Anchorage. So on the civil side, at least, our role will be to advise and support and make sure that whatever solution comes up is presented is legal. Specifically to the question about prosecution. So I understand that one problem, and I'm not saying that prosecution is the answer to every problem, but I understand one issue that the Municipal Prosecutor's Office is facing is that they are not able to prosecute everything that perhaps they should, that they are having to make choices because of extremely low staffing between actually conducting trials or attending court hearings, procedural hearings. And so I think that there is a frustration with Anchorage residents, and I think probably also from the police and the community, that there's a sense that there are no consequences when crimes are committed. So getting more staffing in there, enabling them to clear their backlog, and again, to Chief Case's points in his work session, considering whether individualized or diversionary programs are appropriate. I think all of that together would hopefully help at least resolve the part that the backlogs in the Municipal Prosecutor's Office have been contributing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have myself back in the queue. So thank you for pivoting us off of the can we work together question, or how can we work together. I would also note Mr. Vaughn joined us at 12:10 on the phone, and Mr. Salt is now in the room, and Mr. Gates, Assembly Council, is also on the phone. I have two questions, and I don't have a long list, so I feel comfortable asking both. One is more topical, and one is more philosophical. I'll start with the philosophical one first. So we've talked a bit about how your job is performance law, which is, contextualizing these questions on the dais in the moment when everything is happening. And that's one aspect, but there's another aspect to this that I would like your kind of philosophy or thoughts on. I don't want to out anyone here, but I may or may not have two attorneys I work with who, one is very conflict averse and one finds kind of satisfaction in the conflict, because the conflict is where the idea is sorted through and hammered out and the best thing comes out of it. And both of them like to go through the process, but they have a different orientation. So my question to you is, what is your orientation to conflict and tension when the heat is risen? We're in a nice, cool, collected, happy, jovial moment right now, but there are not always going to be these moments. There are going to be moments when passions are high, disagreements are big, and there isn't a bridge that we can see yet. So the question is, what is your orientation to conflict in your practice of law?
Thank you. I believe you said you had two questions, so I'll answer this and then,
Oh, I have a second question.
Okay.
That wasn't both of them. I said, I'll start with the
right.
philosophical one first. And the first is, what is your orientation to conflict in your practice of law?
Okay. Well, first, I also want to say you said that my job is performance law. I think that is actually a small part of my job, but I understand with the lack of access to the municipal attorney over the last few years, that has been the part that you see. So, the assembly meetings are an important part, but there is work to do, so much work to do elsewhere the rest of the time. So conflict, I would say in my last few weeks of private practice, I had a very wise client say to me, I consider litigation to be the ultimate failure of communication. And I approach conflict the same way. I think my initial approach, if tensions are high, is to see if we can de-escalate enough to find common ground, or at least get to the point where we can listen. And I have had a lot of experience with this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I always view it as an opportunity. Let's see, sort of curiosity and excitement. Like, let's see if we can get this turned back down, and let's see if we can actually talk and listen. And often, if you are able to get people to talk and listen, even if you can just agree on the goal of we are here together, can we make progress? What can we do to make progress? Then that often helps. So I don't mind conflict, but it's not something I try to promote, I would say, as a lawyer. It's fun to be in court. It's fun to get into arguments, but it is much better to communicate. And I will say, even when tensions are high, civility is very important to me. And I think the ability to communicate and listen with respect is paramount.
So my second question, since someone else has raised their hand, is going to get to some of the ticky-tacky, and you can only probably talk so far because you're probably developing this. But what is your legal analysis about the Grants Pass and Martin v. Boise decision, and how it's going to impact your office and our work going forward?
So this is a issue that I've followed, in the legal news for some time. I will say I don't have depth of knowledge in it yet. My sense of the Grants Pass decision, based on reviewing it and talking to my office, is that it gives quite a bit of latitude to local governments. There are attorneys in my office who have more depth in that. They've been working on these issues for years. And one of our goals in the next few weeks is to work. We've already had meetings with the ACLU to discuss the impact and what the new legal framework looks like. And so I don't have a detailed answer for you right now, but we are working to develop. My office's goal is to provide the legal framework, the legal box, the room, if you will, that the law requires the municipality to operate within. And then the policymakers can have that as a reference point to make sure that whatever policy they're creating from a practical and humanitarian and economic perspective is something that comports with the law. So that's kind of my general approach to how I could answer that question in the future.
Thanks. And just from a personal perspective, this is obviously not the Assembly's perspective until the Assembly speaks. Figuring out how to maintain the humanity of the people living in our streets is a critical juncture in this conversation, because, march on, you can't stay here, march on, you can't stay here, march on, you can't stay here is not an answer. And it's a perpetuation of suffering. And so anyhow, we have to square that. That's a policy question, but I just want to get that out there. Others? So here's again, performance law question. Does the Assembly have the authority to issue subpoenas for legislative purposes?
This is not an issue I have specifically looked into, but I will say my assumption has been yes.
Okay.
I do not have any initial horror at that proposal.
We-
And I've been following the news for the past few years.
Yeah, so we'll maybe talk more about that later. It's an important question to me as the steward of the legislative branch. Other questions? Anyone on the phone? So I will just note then that this room is 16 people in it. 8 of them are attorneys.
Sorry for the rest of you.
I appreciate that this number will grow and that we'll get some energy back that has been lost, and that you have a big challenge ahead of you. Oh, here's one last question. We didn't talk about indigent defense, and we talked about the prosecutor's office, but we didn't talk about the defense we have to ensure for people who can't afford defense. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that too.
Thank you. And in my opening comments, I did say that is one of the projects that we will be working on. So that is not something I've looked into yet. I'm waiting for my deputy to get here, but as soon as he is here and my full leadership team is here, we are going to pull those contracts, look at them, meet with the providers, and start making a plan. I'm aware of the problems with that situation.
Yeah, it's two sides of the same coin. People have a right to adjust trial and defense if they can't afford one. So, okay, with that, then I think, Ms. Brawley, do you have any questions?
No, thanks.
Thanks. Ms. Brawley has joined us. Then it seems like half an hour would have been sufficient, or just a little bit more. The item AM 553-2024, which is the executive appointment confirmation of Eva Gardner, municipal attorney, will be before us on Tuesday. Thank you for answering questions. We'll be adjourned. Coming back for a work session at, I think it's at 1. Thanks.